Benjamin, we're going to talk about 3 things you women need to know about men. And then at the end of Benjamin's presentation, we're also going to tell you how you can get a little bit more interesting insight on this, because we have a little free gift for you. But we'll talk about that later. So Benjamin, why don't you jump right in and tell us the first thing that we as women need to know about men?
Okay. The first thing, and obviously, Michelle and I talked about this before we sat down to do this. And the first item that we really came up with quickly, what should be the first thing? Well, boom, this one. Men, relationships matter to men as well. And in an ideal world, this shouldn't come as a big news flash, but unfortunately it does. And as I've said in previous interviews, the only expertise I really bring to this process is 2 full decades post high school of dating as a single guy.
You got the street cred, baby.
Okay, but that 20 years, I can look back on it and I can kind of give the lie to a lot of things that are believed about what men want or do not want in relationships. And as I've said in certain other interviews before, I'm here talking about what you might generically call the good man. A man who does dumb things on a regular basis, who makes tons of mistakes, but down at the foundation, he's trying. Down at the foundation, he's approaching you and he's approaching the other people in his life in good faith and is all in all a decent guy. So when I speak in terms of this is what I'm talking about. I'm tragically well aware that there's no shortage of guys who are otherwise, and different videos and different top 5 or top 10 lists of what to avoid are needed in order to handle that. So I'm talking about the sometimes amazing, sometimes clueless, but basically decent man.
Those are the kind of men that you're saying a relationship is also important. A
relationship matters, and I can't put that in big enough capital letters. All throughout that 20-year period of my dating life that I mentioned, it was a real focus of mine to have that. I felt I needed that. Not only companionship, that sounds too thin. I needed that perhaps oneness, but there was a problem, and that is both amongst people I knew better and amongst more casual acquaintances. I'd seen a lot of relationships and marriages go south, sometimes in really bad ways. And one of my coworkers at my job when I was single, she was a divorcee, and she looked me in the eye one day after we'd been talking a bit, and I'd been moaning and groaning about my dating life, and she looked me in the eye, and with all the seriousness of a heart attack, she said, "Benjamin, remember, the worst life I can think of as a single is still better than a bad marriage." And having that in my mind all the time, it caused me, yes, to be cautious, but it never even came close to removing from me that desire to have the right woman in my life. And there was a real emptiness. And men, one of the unfortunate things about the ways that men and women apparently differ is that men, both from my personal experience and viewing others, men tend to rely more on the, shall we say, the bravado of appearance and the bravado of accomplishment in order to try to convince people around them that everything is all right. Now, obviously, women will do this too in a different way, but women usually will have a more well-developed social network, a more well-developed network of friends, and those that they're close to, and perhaps most importantly, that they can be a confidant with, that allows them to have that emotional support. Whereas unless a single man is very, very close to his immediate family and talks about his personal situation with them, that's not going to be as much available for a man. But it doesn't change the fact that regardless of what the man is attempting to do in the braggadocio department to cover it up, it's still there. I mean, whether or not he goes out and buys a $60,000-$80,000 car, or as a friend of mine who's a psychologist refers to it, the extension of my manhood car. You can fill in the blank there, but it's that longing is still there. And here's the key: that longing is not satisfied by mere physical intimacy in a commitment light or a commitment free situation. Now, this is if there's one thing and as I said before, I'm talking about the basically good man here. If there's one thing I'd like to kind of wipe off the board, because I hear it so much around, it's that, men are just going out looking for a sexual partner, looking for sex. And it's just, men make an emotional connection that way, but it's like, it's like someone who has an addictive personality, or someone who relies upon a certain suboptimal way of coping. If a man turns to that without the accompanying emotional connection and deep commitment, it's like a soup that's too thin, or some type of, as I said, some type of addictive substance. It doesn't work. So men are looking for a relationship. One of the problems is, they oftentimes are clumsy in their initial attempts to pursue them. And this is where I like to joke that when anyone compliments me on, I say, well, about 87.3% of my goodness as a husband is directly due to her patience as a wife. And this is where I think as women, you can profit greatly through learning a little discernment. And by that, I mean learning to discern when a man is earnest, but a little clumsy. Earnest, but he's not picking up on the radar what you quite might want him to as quickly as you might want him to. Discern between the earnest but stumbling man and the man who might be flirting on the boundaries of that territory I mentioned earlier, where he might cross a line, leaving the territory of the good man and entering the territory of the one that you might not want. But what I can say from the entirety of my experience, that 20 years, was that the desire for a complete relationship, for physical closeness, for emotional bonding, for a spiritual dimension, that never left me. And that desire was never absent. And although there were times when I saw situations in the lives of others that caused me to pull back and be nervous, I was always coming back to it. And now, having been married to Michelle for 12 and a half years, I can now look back on that period of being single, and I realize it's a bit of a cliche when married people say this, but I guess it's a cliche because of the real truth in it. I really can look back on all those years of being single, and I can say, I see it now. I see why. I see why what happened needed to happen, or what happened was beneficial. So that's point one. Men want and need relationships.
Yeah, men want and need relationships. It's important to them too. And I'm so glad that that's number one, because I think there's a belief out there the relationships are not as important to women. Now,
do you mean to men?
Yes, that relationships are not as important to men as they are to women. Did that come out right this time?
Mm-hmm.
And and Benjamin's saying it's not true for, like he said, for those guys that are perhaps dealing with you in good faith. I can remember when I interviewed Evan Marchant. This has been several man panels ago. And one of the things that he was talking about how for most men, they don't have a lot of really close, intimate relationships or even really close friendships. Even with their buddies, it's more like the hey dude kind of culture, you know, how's it going? Dude. How's it going, dude?
The dude culture.
And they don't necessarily have a lot of outlets to share their deepest thoughts and feelings or emotions, or just to have that kind of intimate connection that goes beyond the physical, but the physical can be a part of it. So as he was talking about this, he actually got almost a little emotional and said, if we don't have you, meaning you as a woman in our life, what do we have? Kind of saying we don't have a whole lot if we don't have you. So I do think that for men, there can be things going on in their lives, like if they're going through a transition period or trying to figure out a career, or they're coming out of a really rough relationship or a divorce, or have undergone a big financial setback or other kind of setback in their lives, where they may be a little bit more gun shy and not quite as ready for a relationship. But I think what Benjamin's describing here that he experienced in his single life is kind of more of this constant desire that was always there for him. And as I've interviewed men on these man panels, this is the fourth year I've done this man panel, this has been reiterated again and again. So we wanted to just kind of take this one on because it comes up so often. So Benjamin, that's my little piece just to kind of put that exclamation point on what you said.
Thank you very much.
What is number two that you want us to know?
Number two. Okay. A man needs, in order for a relationship with a woman to really work, a man needs to feel needed. And okay, it sounds cliche, and I'm going to start it off with another cliche. And this is an old saying that is old enough that many of you may have heard it, and that is, a man's message to the woman in his life is, you can tell me what to do, or you can tell me how to do it, but not both.
I tried that both thing. It didn't work that well.
But she's wise enough. She's very wise. She's wise enough to have backed off from that. It is the source of endless jokes, endless cartoons, endless sitcom situations where you have a man who is attempting to perform a certain task, and he's getting a lot of hearty advice on how to do it, as well as a generous sprinkling of editorial commentary when it's not being done quite right. And what very much cements a feeling of security in the relationship is when a man knows that he's needed and has the respect of the woman that he's with. Now, on many occasions, Michelle has told me, that on many occasions you'll have situations where, women will respond to that with something along the lines of, well, I'll respect him. I'll respect the man if he deserves it. I said, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, you're basically giving him the same deal that you give every other human being in the world. I mean, your family members, your best friend, your moderate friends, your acquaintances, your person you meet once or twice on the street. But this is why this is why it is so important. And Michelle says this to her clients and on her presentations over and over again. You need to get to know a man enough and thoroughly enough in those early stages of a relationship before committing too much, that you know about his character, that you know about what he's all about inside. Because if you take that, if you enter into a long-term committed relationship with a man and you take into it the attitude I just mentioned, if every day it's going to be, okay, I'll have respect for you if you at any given moment deserve it. Well, the problem is that takes a feeling of security. That takes a feeling of confidence right out of things. Remember, we're talking about the decent man here. And sometimes I think, and Michelle has practice at this, sometimes I think women are just going to have to roll their eyes, get good practice rolling their eyes and saying, yeah, that's him. In other words, the time to find out if you can respect a man needs to come before you're in the situation where you're in a relationship and you have to somehow make that decision over and over again every day. Because that can put a man in a situation where if it goes too far, he finds himself walking in the house or apartment to be greeted by his worst critic, and nobody's really fond of that.
So Benjamin, I want to ask you a question, because I really agree with what you're talking about here. In fact, I've said to women, it's really important that you're able to respect the man you're with. Because I think for most women, if they lose all respect for a man, the feelings of love tend to go away as well.
Yeah. And
you need to respect who this man is, like you're talking about, from a heart and character standpoint, on a deep core level. You need to respect who he is. And if you're with a man that you can't respect, or that you want to change, you want to turn him into your fixer-upper project, ladies, sometimes we want to do that, then you need to be finding a new man. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And feeling needed intertwines with feeling with respected for a man. I mean, if a man looks at the contribution he makes in the relationship, and if he looks at the reaction of the woman in his life and she is very pleased and she's very happy with what he has done, he sees that as respect for him, for his work. If what he has done is being valued, then he feels respected.
Yeah, and I think this is so key, ladies, because I think even just your smile, if a man does something that pleases you, smile at him, or just say thank you, or that was so nice of you, or how sweet. Just acknowledge what he offers, what he does. Be willing to receive what he has to offer and to acknowledge and appreciate him. Because first of all, it creates a win-win scenario because he'll be encouraged to want to do nice things for you and to treat you well. And he will feel appreciated, respected, acknowledged, needed. All of these things really tie in together. And it's interesting because as Benjamin talks about this, he's talking about being needed as feeling respected, meaning what he brings to the table, what he has to offer needs to matter, needs to mean something. He needs to feel like he's respected for what he brings to the table. As I already mentioned, besides doing the accounting and the legal work for my business, Benjamin does so many little nice things for me, many of which I'm capable of doing for myself, but that he does so many nice things for me and shows that he loves me in so many nice ways. And so all I get to do is appreciate him, acknowledge that, respect him, and he feels needed because he knows he's making a difference in my life, which leads us beautifully into number 3.
Now, men in a relationship are often going to show their love through actions. Now, I hasten to add, this does not relieve a man of his obligation to express it verbally on a regular basis.
No, in fact, I joke with Benjamin and say, if you don't tell me you love me every single day, then I might think you stopped. Which I know he hasn't. But he's so sweet and is very generous in sharing his feelings for me verbally as well as showing. But the point is that many times men do show their love through their actions, right?
Yes, and let me give you an example. And it's interesting because I've remembered this ever since I think it was my teenage years, when I was listening to a woman from my community. She was talking about the need to recognize love, and she told the story about how her husband would get up in the morning about the same time she did. She had to leave the house just a bit earlier than him. And he would go out to the garage, and this is in a climate where the winters get really cold. And he would crack open the garage door a few inches for ventilation, and he would start her car and turn the heater on. Just without being asked to do it, he would just start the car and turn the heater on. So when she came out to the garage, she had a warm, toasty car on a 20-degree day ready to go. And what is that? The 20 Fahrenheit. What? -5, -6 Celsius. Anyway.
Don't go by me.
And it's an international audience. And she had talked about because she had feelings of late that she wasn't sure of his feelings, but she said not only that event, but others came to my mind as I sat down, and I realized that my husband was showing for me a deep love and a deep desire to be. It showed that he had an anxious concern for my happiness and well-being. And that is, as women, as I said before, as women, I think you can profit very much for looking for those expressions of love. Because, as another cliche says, but again, it's a cliche because there's a lot of truth in it, men are much less verbal in their expression of emotion. They usually don't process their emotions and work through them in the same kind of verbal interchange that women will. And so as women, I think you can profit in your relationships by saying, what is he expressing by what he does? If my car's out in the freezing cold and he's out there with his breath steaming, scraping the car, that says something. Mm-hmm. And it's important to notice and recognize these things.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting because as I was having this conversation with Allison Armstrong for this event, one of the things we talked about was the fact that to a man, oftentimes these acts of service that we're talking about, these actions are ways that a man shows that he cares about you. And for a man to really care about you, that means he's willing to invest his precious energy and time and effort and attention and focus into you. And Allison and I were talking about, and Benjamin and I have talked about from time to time, how men tend to look for the most efficient ways to use their energy to do everything. It's a nice way of saying it sometimes, right? From our perspective.
Or as Douglas Adams, the cartoonist who does the Dilbert strip, says that men just seem to have this unnecessary work extra gene in them, that where they sniff out to avoid, any unnecessary, inefficient work. So if a man is putting in the work in seemingly smaller ways, just to make sure that that your level of comfort or safety or satisfaction is increased, watch for that, because it's very meaningful. Men for the most part, I can only speak for myself, but I dare say from what I've heard from other men, it's fairly true. Men will only go out of their way in all those small little ways when it's meaningful, when it's really meaningful to them, when it makes sense, when it's important. And so when he does it for you, it's important.
You're important.
Yes.
It's important. You're important to him if he's doing those things for you. And also, we know that for men, oftentimes the actions speak louder than the words. Like if you're getting mixed messages, or if you're getting flowery words but no actions to back them up, those are things to watch for, because a man who really cares about you, who wants to please you, who cares about your happiness and well-being, is going to be consistent in those things. And so it's important to kind of watch for those things. And then remember also, ladies, oftentimes the biggest reward you can give in turn back to a man is not necessarily to do the same kinds of things for him, although sure, men would appreciate having thoughtful things done for them. But your appreciation, your smile, your acknowledgement, your thanks, you're letting him know that he makes a difference, that you need him, that you appreciate him, that you're glad he's in your life. Those kinds of things are like gold for a man. Am I telling the truth here? You're the man.
Yeah. And I have used this quote before, so forgive me, those who've heard it. But I'm going to use it now, and there's an excellent chance I'm going to use it again. It's by that lovable old reprobate, H.L. Mencken. He said, women have the capacity to make men perfectly happy, but they seldom know how to do it. They make too much effort. They forget the profound power of simple amiability, simple friendliness and warmth. So it does require oftentimes a suppression of those feelings that, look, hon, you're doing it wrong, and I need to fix this so that you'll be happier. You're not doing it in a way that you'll be happiest, and I need to not only tell you what to do, but I need to tell you how to do it. And let me tell you, just as a woman feels safe in a relationship when she feels physically safe, a man feels safe in a relationship when he comes close to the woman in his life. What he'll find is amiability.
Mm-hmm.
That absolutely ticks off all the boxes for a man. If he feels that his contribution is appreciated and that he's met with, well, friendliness. That's as that quote I just mentioned says, that goes farther than a lot of elaborate plans to fix the situation so that he's happier. We're making a lot of effort so he'll be happier. Well, there's a simpler way to do it.
Yeah, in fact, my friend Carrie Valentine, who's again has been on the man panel several times, he said, men appreciate your sweetness. Now, some of us may bristle a little bit at that word. If you don't particularly think of yourself as being super sweet. I'm not talking about saccharine here. I'm talking about kindness, gentleness, warmth, appreciation, giving a man, your smile, your gentle touch, your caring. That's that. When I hear that word, those are the kinds of things that I think about, and I think they can make a huge difference in your interactions with a man, and he can feel a lot better about what he's bringing to the table for you, because you'll be showing appreciation to him in a way that's meaningful to him.
Yes, and I don't particularly care what personality type that you're bringing to the table here. I mean, everybody is coming from a different personality type. This does not require you to change that. It's simply any personality type can look at the person in their life and express friendliness and gratitude. Mm-hmm. So we're not saying change who you are. We're saying the formula takes, the process of relationship is a refining process. It happens year after year after year. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But on the other side of the coin, the successful beginning of that process is a lot simpler than a lot of people make it out to be. Mm-hmm. Respect, gratitude, friendliness, amiability. That can come from whatever your personality type is. You can do it.
A little smile doesn't hurt. A little smile with your face and with your eyes.
Give them a grin. Give them a grin.
So I think part of this is learning how to maneuver the world in what I like to call your feminine grace, your feminine presence. So Benjamin, you're the best.
Thanks, love.
I love you.
Love you.
He's my secret weapon, ladies. I tell my clients he's my secret weapon, because if I ever need to kind of bounce off an idea with him or of something that I've been discussing with a client or something that has come up, and I really want to understand or get more detail on the male perspective. He's my guy. He's my guy in more ways than one, and he's kind of my secret weapon, and I just love and appreciate him so much for being a part of these events, because one thing you may not know about my sweet Benjamin is Benjamin has a pretty introverted personality, and I can never imagine that when he married me, that he ever thought he would be appearing in front of an international audience of women, sharing his thoughts and feelings and being this visible in this way. And so to me, this is it's one of those acts of service. It's that showing of love. It's a real life example of this last thing that we talked about, of him showing his love through his actions for me. And it just means a lot to me. And I just want you to know how much I love you and how proud of you I am. So ladies, forgive that little moment. That little personal moment, but I just wanted to express my appreciation and love for Benjamin. And Benjamin and I also have a free gift for you. If you click on the link below, some of you may have received this before, but if not, you should definitely check it out. It's 10 secrets every woman needs to know about men. So it kind of goes deeper on this topic that we've been talking about today, and we highlight some additional things. It's an ebook, and it's also a class that my friend Wendy Newman and I taught on this topic. And we talked about some pretty interesting things that I think you'll find really helpful and revealing. So Benjamin, thank you again for your wisdom and generosity and for being such a sweetheart. He's the best hubby ever. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks for allowing us to have this kind of informal format for this conversation today. It's been fun to be with you. Lots of love. Bye for now.